Welcome to 2 Cents. We see scary movies, where even a day at the lake can end in existential dread. I'm Talon, the type who'd be suspicious of a puddle, let alone a floating oil slick with a taste for teenagers. With me is Dan, who'd only go swimming if someone promised the lake monster would rate his form. Since there are 5 Tuesdays this April, we're squeezing in Stephen King's The Raft as a bonus episode, a perfect little appetizer for next month's theme, lakes. Consider this your warning that the water's only going to get creepier from here. All right, Dan, it's all you.
We have The Raft, also by the book Skeleton Crew, one of my favorite books by Stephen King. I love short stories. We start off with The Raft. We see 4 college kids driving in a car. There's some generic rock music going on. We have Randy, who's the kinda decent one, and I say kinda because we'll learn why later. Deke, the obnoxious jock. Laverne, who's presented as the promiscuous one, and Rachel as the innocent one. They're just driving down a curvy road, going to a secluded lake for a swim. They're smoking weed and driving relatively unsafely.
Right.
They have the skidding sound effect pretty heavily through the beginning.
There are lots of curves on that road.
Lots of curves. And Randy and Deke are discussing the lake and the raft. And Deke's like, oh, it better be there. And Randy's like, yeah, I was there a couple weeks ago and it was still there.
I didn't understand that. Do they take those rafts in and out?
Yeah, generally, like during the summer, during the fall and winter, they bring them in, or at least they put them off to the side.
Right, because of ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about
that. So Deke, the jock, he's making fun of Rachel because she's being so quiet because everybody else is laughing and hooting and hollering and she's just sitting there watching the drive. They said that they've been driving for about 50 miles, so wherever they're coming from, they're at least an hour or so away to this lake. They're doing the typical 80s obnoxious teenage tropes, the sexual jokes and the weeding and all that stuff.
Right.
Oh, those crazy kids! They get to the lake and they park like an offensive team. The way they park into it, it's like they're going for the offense on some sort of game or something. It was really weird. And the lake is in the middle of nowhere. It's surrounded by a dense forest, and at this point there's no other people around, and we're all relieved to see that the raft is still there.
Thank God. Otherwise, that's the end of the movie.
It would have been a wasted trip.
Right.
And the story would end right there. That's the horror. The raft was not there. So Deke immediately gets out of the car and strips down to his shorts like nobody's business.
Yellow Speedos.
Yes, the yellow Speedos.
Very bright yellow Speedos.
Laverne gets out, and then so does Randy, and Rachel's the last one to get out. Deke gives a slap to Randy before running to the lake. The slap is about as loud as the zipper in April Fool's Day. It's unnecessarily loud. Deke ends up running into the water, and Laverne is kind of flirting with Randy, and it shows that Deke and Laverne are a couple. Rachel and Randy are kind of a couple. But as Deke runs into the water, Laverne is flirting with Randy a little bit before he runs over to the lake. Rachel's not really all that impressed with the flirting, but she doesn't really say anything. She just gives Randy a dirty look, who just kind of like shrugs in return.
Right. She's not impressed with much of anything in this.
No.
At all.
No, she kind of seems like she was taken hostage and just kind of brought there.
Didn't look like she wanted to be there.
Right. And when he jumps in, he finds out that it's really cold.
I actually looked this up because I was curious to know if it was actually that cold. Because they looked like, because they do that thing when you get in the freaking cold water, you go, you suck everything in because it's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's like either they're doing a really good job or it's actually cold. So I looked it up, and they filmed this in Pennsylvania, and it was they didn't say the temperature, but apparently it was very cold water. It was fall in Pennsylvania somewhere.
Okay.
So
this is where we learn Randy is a med student because he's like, if the water's too cold, your heart could stop. He walks to Laverne, and I'm pre-med. I know these things, seemingly trying to impress her. Already, she's flirting with him. There's not really much to impress at that point. She's pretty much there.
She's, of course, your classic 80s. What's a nice way to say this?
Promiscuous one.
There you go. Promiscuous. There we go. Girl who will just take whatever's coming.
Right. So Randy finally gets in and he's like, oh, it's fine. And then he turns around and you can tell that he's lying completely because he's looking at the girl saying it's fine. And he turns away from the girls and he has that look on his face like, holy shit. Like, this
he
is cold.
says to, what's his name? Deke. He says to Deke, he's like, it's fucking freezing or something like that. He does say something. He whispers something to him like,
yeah. And then he's like, it's not worth getting laid.
Yeah. Those things probably aren't going to be big enough if that water's that cold.
The thing is, was that the expectation? They get on the raft and they bone?
Of course. This is an 80s movie.
This is true. This is true.
And they're just going to have a big old orgy, I guess. I don't know.
Right. The girls are hesitant at first to go in, but Rachel, she's fully clothed and she just runs right in. Sweatshirt and shorts and all.
Sweatshirt and everything. I was like, good God, that's worse. Because it's going to be sopping cold, wet, heavy sweatshirt.
Yep, absolutely. I was just thinking that, it's going to be very heavy. Verna's the last one in. You could tell that she's cold.
Right.
She looks back at the car. The door's left completely wide open, and the music is still playing. Either they didn't turn the car off, or they didn't turn the car off completely.
Yeah, so some accessories.
Right. And they all start swimming towards the raft. As they're swimming there, Randy, he appears to be the more observant one and a little bit more cautious because he notices this dark oil slick like thing floating in the water. He sees a duck struggling in the oil mass. The duck is just like screaming, trying to get out, and then lets out like one final scream when it was pulled under. And he kind of stares at it for a minute, but then he just moves on. Like, oh, whatever. That guy that says nothing's wrong, he's just not saying it this time. He's just observing it. Now, the oil slick does appear, unnatural because it appears to be like a living mass. They just kind of dismiss it as a simple oil spill.
Right. Cool. In the middle of nowhere.
Right. Where there's nothing to have oil be dumped in unless
it's not like there's big oil ships like cargo or whatever they call those things out in this pond. Like
right.
Upon closer examination, it doesn't look as much like an oil slick when you look at it close up, but far away it definitely looked like an oil slick. And the way the duck was in it now, well, when it's just doing its thing afloat on the water, it doesn't look like an oil slick. But once there's something in it, it does look oily. But it's not an oil slick, obviously.
Deke and Randy are the first ones up on the raft. Randy is just kind of staring at the mass as it's moving around. He's just not saying anything. He's just staring at it. Randy's like very scared. He's telling the girls to swim faster. Like he's just screaming it like, come on, hurry up, hurry up.
And I got the feeling that as he was watching it, he noticed that it was very deliberate in its movement, that it wasn't just floating around aimlessly like how the wind blows. It had a very deliberate movement, and that's when he started to panic because he's like, what the fuck is this thing?
And nobody else seems to notice it,
right?
Like, even though like you can definitely see it, nobody's paying attention to it whatsoever. Deke is being an asshole as Rachel tries to get up, and he's bouncing up and down on the raft, making it difficult for her to get in. She falls off the raft a couple times. Randy was trying to pull her up. He was being a little quick and a little bit rough. She hurts her knee and she falls back into the water. Randy pulls her up, and Rachel's blaming Randy for her falling in when it was obviously Deke. Randy is now yelling at Laverne, who's taking her sweet ass time with the doggy paddle.
Yeah, when I first was watching this, I was like, come on, swim. What the fuck is wrong with you? But when I looked up the thing with the water and how cold it was, and it also told me a whole bunch of facts about swimming in cold water. And apparently it's very hard to swim in cold water. So I was like, well, now I feel bad because I was yelling at Laverne.
Well, Rachel did it in full clothing.
She did. Laverne was definitely slower than all of them.
So Deke finally notices Randy's distress, and he looks down and he sees the mass kind of wrapping around the raft at that point. And it's getting close enough to Laverne, and she gets up onto the ladder just in the nick of time. Like, production-wise, it did touch her, but...
Right.
The movie is, or the short is trying to say that she just made it just in the nick of time.
Right.
Vern also yells at Randy for pulling her up on the raft. I don't know why Randy's getting yelled at by everybody for pulling them out of the water, but
he's just the first one there, I guess. They see.
So now they're kind of discussing the mass a bit, and Deke says that he doesn't believe it's an oil slick. Randy is saying, well, it was going after the girls, and that it was kind of like you said, the deliberateness of it. Deke insinuates that Randy is high.
Right, he probably is, but yeah.
And then Randy has the light bulb come on saying, hey, nobody knows where we are. Apparently they didn't tell anybody where they were going.
Yeah,
and being the 80s, there's no cell phones or anything, so they're screwed. Deke is just going on and on and on about Randy seeing an oil slick and just giving him shit about it.
Right.
And Deke is like, when did you ever see an oil slick? And Rachel says, well, we saw one a few years ago. And Deke just speaks Spanish for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. So he's got that under his belt at least. So the mass is hovering around the raft. They all ask Randy what it is because, he's the pre-med guy, so he should know everything. He says that he doesn't know. He has no idea what it is. Deke and Laverne at this point are starting to make out all over each other. There's this thing in the water. They have no idea what it is. So now's the perfect time to start making out.
I didn't catch this until the second time I watched it, but he pulls out a joint and they started smoking. I was like,
yes.
How the fuck did he get a joint over here? And he's in the middle of the water. I was like, what the fuck?
Right.
How did it not get drenched?
I didn't even think about that.
When I watched it the second time, he had this little thing a little plastic container he had attached to his Speedos.
Oh, okay.
And they were in there. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I was like, what the fuck? I was like, how is that possible? I was like, come on now. I was like, there's suspending belief, but all right. But yeah, that's how we did it.
So Randy and Rachel are looking at the mass at this point. Rachel is rubbing it with her finger. Well, I got to clarify. She's rubbing the mass with her finger.
Yeah. Mass of what? Like, let's be clearer, please.
It is an 80s movie, so, I mean, you have Deke and Laverne making out for no reason.
Well, I will say, when it comes to mass and those two guys, you couldn't really tell as much with Randy. But before Deke got in the water and he's standing there in his Speedos, yeah, okay, decent-sized mass. But when he got up on the raft, that decent-sized mass was a little pointy, tiny little, I mean, you could see it was like a teeny little point. Bloop. I was like, yeah,
it shrinks in cold water.
Yeah, we learned from Seinfeld that there's some shrinkage there, and there definitely was. So obviously the only mass at that time was what was in the water.
Yes. So as Rachel is, touching the mass, and before anyone could react, this blob shoots up its tendrils and snares her arm. It just wraps right around it. She's screaming agony, and the creature is dissolving her flesh, pulling her down into the water.
Right.
The others are watching in horror as Rachel is gruesomely devoured by this mass. Like, she's in the water. And again, I don't know if it was a conscious decision, but as she's going down into the water, she kind of has that look of the Evil Dead cover.
Right.
Where she's being pulled down by the demons. It kind of has that same look. Panic sets in as they're realizing that the raft is the only safe place that they're in right now, and that they're stranded in the middle of the lake with this thing around them. I don't know why all of a sudden it's a full realization, but it takes a death to figure that out. Again, Deke is still pushing Randy about the ins and outs of this thing because he's the science guy, pre-med guy. Laverne is panicked. With the calm rationale of Deke, he threatens to punch her if she keeps it up. That seems a little extreme to me.
It does seem like a bit much.
Because, I mean, she's panicked. Her friend just got eaten by this thing.
What do you expect?
And Deke is helping out by saying he's going to punch her in the face. Cool. And he is all about swimming past it. Like, he thinks that he's just going to be able to go and be good.
Well, in his defense, in that theory, which goes along with your bait theory, is if the three of them had jumped in the water, Laverne would have been the one to get caught. Like,
yes.
The thought process is, if we all jump in the water and swim back to shore, which wasn't that far, then whoever's the slowest is the one that's going to get fucked. So they really should have all jumped in at this point and swam as fast as they could. That's what I would have done.
And that would be so much better than punching her in the face.
Certainly. Just forgo the beating this woman in the face and just let this creature thing eat her.
So they're thinking of different ways of escape, and they're hoping that the Rachel Mignon has made the creature full. We see a long shot from shore. I think the car was facing in the opposite direction with the different door open.
Both doors were open.
Yeah, I think the script supervisor was sleeping on that one.
I didn't even notice that, but I did notice that both doors were open because my thought was that battery's going to die.
So Deke is still asking Randy what the hell this thing is, and he's told him 4 times already that he doesn't know.
Right. Yeah. Like, you're just going to make something up.
And at this point, the mass moves under the raft, and Deke is standing there, and he's a bit more of the muscular, reckless guy of the group. He's really still pushing the idea that he's going to be able to outswim the creature. Before he can go, though, the mass seeps up through the the wooden slats and up his leg. Randy is looking on in calm horror.
It's funny because Deke is holding his hand out like, help me. And you see Randy holding his hand out like, I'm going to help you. It's not like Laverne is holding him back or anything. And it's like he's not even trying. It's like there's no effort at all. Like, I'm going to help you. It was such a weird shot because he didn't even look concerned.
Yeah, no, his face was completely flat.
Right. Yeah.
So it suddenly grips Deke further and pulls him through the gaps. Randy finally lunges forward and weakly grabs Deke's arm. Very, very weakly. The mass pulls him further into the boards. Randy lifts his arm to reach for Deke, but he's not going to make it. He's just simply not.
Yeah.
The mass is breaking Deke's body in half.
Yeah, this was
being
crunchy.
Dragged under. Yes.
This is very, very crunchy here.
When his fingers go through, the mass only leaves the class ring behind.
Right. I was really expecting the finger to come ripped off, like with the ring. I was kind of expecting that.
Yeah, because I remember class rings being that tight where, you would rip your finger off before it came off.
Right. But it was a pretty gruesome-ish killing because it's pulling him through and it breaks the boards where he's standing, but it's not a big hole. So it's got the one leg and it's pulling him through and he's standing on the raft with the other leg, but that leg just goes right up straight and he's pulled down and that leg's just up there in the air. So it was a little nasty, but I liked it. The thing is, I just realized I don't remember seeing that hole in that raft after that. Did you see the hole?
No.
I don't remember that hole being there anymore.
It healed.
Yeah. Yeah, this blob, it destroys and heals all at the same time.
Yes.
It destroys humans, but heals nature.
Wood. Right. Randy and Laverne are the only two survivors at this point, and they're both left in terror as they're trying to stay on the raft and out of the reach of the creature, so they're trying to stay within the slats. They look down and see the blob within the slats. Like you can see underneath, and it's coming up a little bit, but not a lot.
Right.
Laverne jumps into Randy's arms and screams. Randy's having trouble holding her up because she's a little heavier than he anticipated, and he is falling back. He convinces her it's safe as long as she doesn't stand on the cracks, so she reluctantly puts her feet down. They embrace as the mass goes out from underneath the raft, and we're coming to nightfall. It was pretty quick. The two remaining survivors are huddled together. They're on the raft and watching the thing to see where it is. They're both exhausted and scared. They're discussing how the night's going to go, and Randy wants to do, switching off watches. So he watches for a bit, then she watches for a bit, and the other one sleeps while the other one watches.
Right.
Laverne doesn't want to, but ultimately ends up agreeing to as long as, Randy wakes her up. The oil slick is just out of reach of the raft at the moment. It's not gone, but it's not underneath anymore.
Yeah.
Laverne falls asleep sitting down while Randy's on watch, and just a simple look wakes her up.
Right.
Laverne is cold, and they agree to hug each other for warmth a little bit more. They're just kind of having a standoff with the oil slick. The next day, the car is still playing music with the door open.
Yeah, I really expected the car battery to be dead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the door being open is understandable, but the playing of the music, it would be gone at that point. Laverne eventually falls asleep lying on Randy's shoulder, and Randy's still awake, kisses her forehead, politely, and
it was a really long kiss to the forehead. My thought was, he was like, I'm kissing you goodbye because I'm just going to throw you into the water and take off. That's what I thought was going to happen because that would make sense, right?
It would. And he lays her down. Now, Randy's getting a little randy and a little rapey.
Yes, a lot rapey. But the funny part about this whole scene is she suddenly became the heaviest sleeper in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So he begins to touch Laverne very inappropriately, like rubbing up her stomach while she's sleeping and lifting her shirt to expose her breasts and kissing her stomach.
Because in a 20-minute short in the 80s, you still had to have boobage.
Of course. It would not be a movie without the boobage.
No.
So Laverne feels it, but she doesn't wake up. She just rolls over a little bit. He ends up going to grab her breast, like full-on grab, and she moves away. Randy is trying to kiss her. Laverne is moaning at this point. Randy thinks it's because of him.
Right. She's having a good time.
So Laverne is moaning and turns to full-blown screams. The creature is beginning to cover her face because she was laying on the slats and he was trying to get it on. The creature went underneath the raft, went up into her face, started pulling at her. Randy again looks on in calm horror.
Right. And from this point on, I am screaming, Randy, jump in the water, swim, 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 swim. What are you waiting for? I was like,
Yep.
there's nothing you can do about this. Go now. Hurry up and get the fuck to shore.
Well, I mean, he kind of does. He just waits till she's pulled into the water.
Yeah, he takes forever. I'm like, this is your opportunity. Like, don't wait until it's already consumed her. Go now.
Right.
It drove me crazy.
So Laverne is pulled in, and that's when Randy makes a break for it. He jumps in the water, and he starts swimming frantically towards the shore. The creature catches on, and he starts pursuing him. And Randy barely reaches land before it can catch him, before it catches up. And believing himself to be safe, he's sitting on the shore, triumphant, and he's like, hey, I beat you!
Right.
Then the creature just rises up like in a huge blanket, lunges forward in a massive wave and engulfs him, dragging him back into the water and killing him instantly.
Mm-hmm.
The camera then pans out, showing the car with the goddamn battery still running. And I mean, I want that battery. Seriously, I want to know what that brand of battery is. It's also panning over the lake with the mass as it's moving back towards the raft. We see a small sign hidden in the trees stating, no swimming, leaving an ominous feeling that this has happened before.
Right. Yeah, that sign was worthless. Nobody was taking care of the overgrowth that was covering that sign.
No, not even a little bit.
He was the park ranger there. Okay. So for me, as a child, when I watched this, because I was a kid in the 80s, this short resonated with me up until today. Because even now, if I go in a lake and there's a raft or even a dock, I stay as far away from them as possible. When I was married a million years ago, my husband's family lived on a cove and they had a dock and it had a ladder. And I would jump out and jump off the dock and go out into the water to swim. But when I had to get back on the dock to get that close to it, I'd have to like psych myself up. And even though I knew there was nothing there, but I'd have to psych myself up. And then once I got to the ladder, it was like, and I up that ladder as quick as I possibly could to get out of the water. Because I just did not want to be that close to that raft. So it still resonates with me to this day. Of course, as a kid, it's different than now as an adult. And I know better, even though I still avoid them. But I'd say kid me would give this movie 10 cents. Absolutely, hands down, no problem. Because it was like, whoa, when I was a kid. But adult me, I would have to say, I'd say maybe, I don't know. I have to go back because I used to be a huge avid Stephen King reader. And I read Skeleton Crew, but I was young. I was like in middle school when I read Skeleton Crew. I'd like to go back and read it again and just compare it to how it was written compared to the movie version, just to see what it's like and how it describes this thing that's in the water. Because sometimes, because of the way Stephen King is, it's hard to take what he's written and transform it into something tangible. Like, remember the Langoliers? Yeah, that one was rough. I like, what are these clams? What are they eating all this stuff for? What are these clams? But so it can be hard to transfer from, which it'll be interesting to go back and read it because I can't remember what the story was like in the book. But I don't know, it still kind of, I think nostalgically it still had that same effect from when I was a kid. So I wouldn't give it a bad rating, like a horrible rating. I'd say maybe but there were some things. So I'd say maybe a 6 cents. I'd go ahead and give it that.
For me, I've always liked the Creepshow movies, except for the third one. That was terrible. I've always loved the Creepshow 2 stories, but the Raft was always my favorite.
Yeah, mine too.
And much like you, it resonated with me.
Uh-huh.
Like whenever I see a raft, like I'm always like thinking about the movie. I mean,
Right.
I don't think that there's going to be an oil slick that's going to come and eat me, but so I could like look at people in calm horror as well. Much like you, if I was younger, I would probably rate it a 10, like 10 cents. But now understanding the implications of the sex scene, it doesn't really sit well with me. And I'm coming from being a girl dad and being, around women pretty much my entire life, like, raised and stuff. I'd have to drop it down to a 7, and it's mostly because of the rapey scene.
Right.
Much like you, I gave it the 2 ratings. As a kid, when I first saw it, when I was first into those movies, 10 cents all the way.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Do you even remember that part in the movie when you were a kid?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you do? I don't remember.
I just don't. I just didn't remember it being as creepy as it was.
Right. Because it was funny because Jolene and I, she watches some of them with me, and when we were watching them, she was like, "What? What an asshole!"
Yeah.
She's asleep. They're about to die. Like all these people are dying, and this is what he's doing right now.
Right.
Which is like, yeah, no shit. Like, what? Why is this the thing that's on your mind right now? Like, what the fuck?
Well, I could only imagine that if he actually started, going to town on her,
right?
And the creature's there, he's like, "Oh no, I gotta finish.
Yeah. Or if it grabs his dick. Yeah. Right. That's the first thing that goes. That's how it should have gone.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think that would have been better if he went first, to kind of get that, revenge.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, Laverne was a very slow swimmer, so.
Oh, and speaking of the swimming, because this is the thing about I was going back to, because when he jumped off finally and swam, his swimming drove me nuts. Now, granted, now that I know that it's hard to swim in cold water, okay, whatever. But it drove me nuts. Because to me, when you're going to swim properly, especially if you want to swim quickly, you swim like a swimmer, which is your head down and occasionally comes up. But you keep that streamlined flow going. But he kept his head above water the whole time he was swimming, which is not a fast way to swim. It's basically doggy paddling, but a little like a level up. But he kept his head above water, and it's like, dude, put your head down, swim like you're supposed to. I kept screaming at him to swim properly, but yeah, his swimming was kind of slow, I felt like, as well. But of course, I guess that's because it's fucking cold, I guess. I don't know. So any other tidbits you want to give out or talk about?
Put a sock on it.
Sock on this one. If you made it through the raft without swearing off lakes forever, you're braver than us. Hit follow. Share your wildest water horror stories and get ready. Our next episode kicks off our lake-themed month with the haunting Lake Mungo. As always, be scared, be prepared, and don't get caught in the dark.